Um, so thank you so much for being here. Today's webinar is going to cover some different strategies for things to consider when using the behavioral strategies of sticker charts, as well as things to consider when trying to implement time out from positive attention. My name is Rosanna Bro, and I'm the director of the Child Study Center at Virginia Tech, and I'm also a licensed clinical psychologist. I've been working with children, adolescents, and families for the past 15 years on managing emotions and behavior, as well as helping support organization time management planning strategies. And as everybody on this call, myself included right now, knows, being a parent can definitely be overwhelming and exhausting at times. I'm the mom of twin, almost 3-year-olds. And so I'm definitely in the thick of it with all of you right now. And during our time together today, hopefully we'll be able to talk through some of the do's and don'ts, or things to try to do and others to avoid to do to help better manage behavior problems. And so to get us started, I want to just jump right into kind of clarifying what I mean by sticker chart. And so, okay. Maybe. Sticker charts or behavior charts are systems to encourage positive behavior and guide children in the, help encouraging positive behaviors, and helping with responsibility and accountability. Oftentimes I hear from families that behavior charts, sticker charts don't work, but we do have decades worth of data at this point really supporting that these are effective strategies to use for managing child behavior. They don't work for every child, nor will they, of course, fully remove problematic behavior. But in general, they are effective when implemented correctly. And so we're going to cover some of those strategies to help implement them effectively. Before doing so, I just want to kind of cover why behavior charts are helpful, especially if you might be skeptical of them, or think that they might not work for your child. Other concerns that I sometimes hear is that children should be intrinsically motivated or shouldn't need to be rewarded for behaving well. And so thinking about how behavior charts are used, or what behaviors to use them for, is really important. Generally, behavior charts should be saved for behaviors that your child's currently having trouble doing, or things that they're really resisting doing. So this could be like if your, child's going to bed every night with no problem. That wouldn't be something that you would necessarily put on a behavior chart and give a sticker for. But if bedtime has become a battle for you, where getting ready for bed each night is really challenging, getting ready for bed with no difficulties could be a behavior that you end up targeting on the sticker chart. And in general, trying to change too many behaviors at one time can be overwhelming, both for you as the parent to manage and keep track of, but also for the child. And so generally we try to keep, a good rule of thumb is 3 behaviors. So just a few behaviors that your child's working on. So maybe this is sharing, maybe this is getting ready for school without an argument, or going to bed without an argument. And you use the sticker charts solely for those behaviors. And this is to help encourage those positive desired behaviors. When we think about how children learn about what behaviors are acceptable or not acceptable, we know from behavior therapy that this is based off of the consequences of those behaviors, or what we do. This is called the ABCs of behavior. Antecedent, what happens before the behavior; B for behavior; and C, consequence, what happens after the behavior. So if you want your child to carry out a behavior more often, giving a reward, so adding something positive, will help reinforce that behavior and make it more likely to happen. The easiest way that I think as a parent to think about this is to think about your job. Although, maybe we should be intrinsically motivated to go to work and contribute to society, receiving a paycheck for doing so definitely helps us continue to want to go. Uh, and if you stopped getting your paycheck, you might be a lot less likely to keep doing your job or maybe want to do as good of a job. And so that is kind of a nice analogy to what behavior charts are. So these are helpful because they're providing frequent feedback every time your child engages in a behavior that you want them to do, and also provides that clear visual reminder of progress that they're making towards the reward or whatever it is they're earning. And I'm going to show some examples of what this can look like. And we'll be discussing some ways to make sure that those rewards are sufficiently motivating in just a little bit. But for now, I also want to highlight that once a target behavior is done consistently, you can change up what those behaviors are rather than always needing to provide a reward for that same desired behavior. And that's one of those ways to address that concern of like, my child's not going to be intrinsically motivated or they're going to want a reward forever, by changing up what behavior you're targeting, and having it be things that they're having a hard time with and that you're working on supporting can make that a lot better. And overall, this flexibility and growth mindset that we can use with behavior charts can really help with building independence and accountability. This is especially true if you're able to give a sticker or mark the spot on the behavior chart as soon as that targeted behavior has occurred. You can do this by keeping the behavior chart in a place in your home where it's easily accessible, like the fridge or maybe in your kid's bedroom. Or by using an app to help keep track of the tokens or the points that they're earning so that you can do it right away. And even count, how many more points they need or stickers they need to earn to get to their reward. I will say, that reminding your child that they're going to get it, or why they got it, can also be really helpful. So, you're going to get the sticker because you went pee-pee on the potty while you're out at the store. Nice job. I'm so proud of you for going pee-pee on the potty. You know, keep it up. We're so close to you earning your prize. I will say, with my twins, so for them, getting a sticker in and of itself is such a big deal, and they're really excited about that. We've been using it for potty charts, and sometimes for them, they're more excited about picking out the sticker that they put on the chart than they actually are for the reward that they're working towards at the end of it, because they're just so excited and proud of themselves because we're getting excited and praising them for it. Okay, so I said to focus on using behavior charts strategically, but the various different things that you're going to end up using it for, like the positive behaviors or the behaviors you're trying to decrease, are really going to differ child to child. I'm going to show some examples of common ones, but again, keep in mind we want to be focusing on either things that are hard for them to do, that you're trying to increase how often they're doing it or the consistency of them doing it, or problematic behaviors that we want to be discouraging them from doing. What is critical when using behavior charts is that you've identified what they're getting rewarded for or what the behaviors are ahead of time. You don't want to be doing this on the spot of like, oh, great job. Like, you remained quiet while we were in the grocery store or during church, and not having them know what it is. That's how we distinguish this from being a bribe for good behavior or using it in the moment. If it is clearly thought out and planned for, this is behavior reinforcement and is rewarding them for good behavior. And so that doesn't mean that you can't in the moment remind them of it. So if you know that going to the store is really challenging, you can remind them as you're walking in that if they're able to cooperate and don't ask you for anything to buy, then you'll get a sticker at the end of it. This can help prevent both tantruming, but also kind of your frustration if they're constantly requesting things in the store, or time that might be taken away from focusing on the things that are on your list. So both encouraging desired positive behaviors, but also potentially redirecting them and reducing the risks of problematic behaviors like tantruming occurring. So some common behavior charts are for things that are routine, because we know these are often challenging for young children who are learning both self-care, but also might have difficulty remembering those multi-step directions. So the benefit here is you both have the visual reminder of what they need to do, and you're also reinforcing when they do each step of this, which can really help with that independence and accountability and reduce the amount of time that you're needing to nag them and give those reminders. There are lots of different ones, some that are like pre-made that are on like dry erase boards where you can use magnets to move over as they're completing the different ones. You can also laminate your own pages and then use like a dry erase board marker with these as well if you don't want to be doing physical stickers and needing to constantly print out new sheets. So it might just take some trial and error. Etsy also has a lot of these, or Teachers Helping Teachers have a lot of ones that have been custom made for these different ones. If you wanted to experiment or trust your own ability to design one of these yourself for your child. I already mentioned about potty training is another really common time to be using these types of sticker charts or behavior charts, because this is a huge milestone for young children and something that can often be resisted or scary for children. If you have a child, one of my twins happened to be really motivated to go to the potty. And so we were able to really just reinforce when she actually went pee or poo in the potty, which is what you see in this example here. But for other children, and this was the case for my other twin, the various steps related to potty training were still being very resisted. And so being able to give reinforcement for the different things like wiping themselves, flushing, washing their hands, and eventually maybe for being able to stay dry during the day or dry at night can be what you're reinforcing. One of the things that's really nice about using behavior charts related to potty training is that we know all children are going to eventually learn to be able to go on their own. And so you don't have to worry about kind of this not being intrinsically motivated. I think this is something that you can give a lot of praise, give rewards for, and really help reinforce during that time period. And the more consistent you are with giving stickers for it, and that they're learning that they can do this, it can help them with other more challenging behaviors because they've kind of started to learn the behavior chart system. And that's exactly kind of what we've started doing as we introduce the idea of behavior charts, sticker charts, with potty training, but are now planning on extending it to other things as they're older to kind of help with keeping them motivated and keeping it fresh with new things as they grow. And this is kind of an example of where that could be moved to. So many families like to use behavior charts for chore charts. For younger children, as you see on the left here, this might be more related to self-care or routines that they're doing in the household. Maybe small chores, depending on their age, like helping with feeding a pet or washing the dishes or even, putting their dishes in the sink. But as children get older, you can use these chore charts for more chores around the house. I really like this example on the right where it kind of breaks down both daily and weekly charts, and then they can earn points for completing the charts on different days. What's really nice about these systems, as you can see, is it allows for the fact that we know that these aren't going to be things that necessarily you want to do or are able to do every day. If you can, great, and that's what we're going to encourage and try to reinforce. But typically, if you're setting up the point system this way, it might be, that once they earn 20 points, then they get what their reward is, their prizes. Or some parents choose to do more of like a menu option where, there might be some smaller things like getting to pick a special snack for your lunch. That's 10 points. Getting an extra 30 minutes of tablet time or electronic time on the weekend, maybe that's 25 points. And then your child can choose what they want to do with the points that they've earned at the end of each week. Again, kind of thinking about having a range of options available is important for motivating. It might also be, depending on your child, that what you actually use could help with the motivation themselves. So stickers, again, motivating for young kids, and even some adults get excited about stickers, especially if they get to pick out, certain ones that they really like. But for others, seeing it can be a lot more exciting. So like I've done cotton balls in a jar, where, as they're earning them, and once the jar is filled, then they get their reward, and they can kind of see as they're making progress. For older children or adolescents, we typically move to more of like a point system where those points then can be cashed in for rewards. Or if you're doing with chores, it could be actual money for things that then they could purchase. There are several really cool apps that can actually help support some of this. I'll share a couple of them in just a moment. Some of the things, though, that are important to consider when using these behavior chart systems are, first and foremost, I'm going to say it again because it's so important, even though I already mentioned it, is to make it clear what your child can earn their sticker or points for. So whatever the behavior or behaviors are that you're targeting, making sure that they know that, and knowing, is it one? Are they getting multiple ones? If you're for older kids, having different points for different behaviors, and having that clearly written on the chart, reminding them of that when it's relevant will really help. Related to that, making it clear what the reward or rewards are that they can earn ahead of time, helping them be a part of the process of deciding what the reward is really important. You want to make sure that these rewards are meaningful to your child. So this shouldn't be a totally open playing field that they can pick anything they want. Sometimes it's helpful to have them pick a couple potential rewards. Or you can kind of set limits in terms of things that they could consider, like extra screen time or having kind of the ability to different options that they can think about that are developmentally appropriate. You don't want the rewards to be something that is too large or take too long for them to earn, because then they're going to lose motivation. And so if there is something really big that they want to earn, sometimes this could be like a video game or something, that you want to then have smaller rewards or things that they can be earning on a more regular basis, because if it's going to take them a month, the behavior chart's not going to be motivating and isn't going to work for them. And related to that point, it is really important to be critical, or to be consistent, not be critical, with reinforcing the desired behaviors, particularly early on. They're not going to buy into and understand the behavior chart. If sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. Think about it. If you didn't know when you were going to get your paycheck, then you wouldn't know and wouldn't be able to consistently work. If you're not home or aren't able to give that sticker or the points right away, let them know that they earned it right away, and tell them that they will get it as soon as they're home. And try to do this as close to when you walk in the door as possible. And kind of related to this idea, It's important that we are consistent with using this only for reinforcing positive behaviors. This is one of the most common mistakes that I see when I start working with families that say like, oh, this isn't working or we've tried that, is that they take away stickers or they lose points if their child engages in problematic or poor behavior. Behavior charts are meant to be used for reinforcement of positive behaviors. It is possible with adolescents or older children that you can use more complicated of a token economy where they can earn and lose points for different things. But for young children, punishment should be separated, or what the consequences are should be separated from the behavior chart, the sticker chart, because otherwise it's not going to be motivating or effective. And so while they might lose privileges or other things related to problematic behavior, it shouldn't be loss of the stickers. That's only for engaging in the desired behavior. Um, Again, I want to be very clear. Good old fashioned piece of paper, the mason jar, dry erase boards are more than adequate and what most people do use. But if you think you would be more consistent by using the app, I just wanted to share a couple that you could consider. So Tokenat is a customizable app that can help with learning and completing new tasks. Again, it's using kind of a behavior modification. You can see what they're working towards. In this case, it looks like the child is working towards being able to get a phone, and as they earn stickers for the different things. And again, they're customizable, so you would put in what it is. My token board is very similar. That's what this app is, where it's a visual reward system. They have different customizable images in terms of the actual tokens that they earn. You put in the names of the child. What I like about this one is for families with multiple kids, you can have multiple different token systems in here for each child. So you can kind of click in and have what each child's behavior is that they're working on and be able to keep track of that. It also has different sounds that play that can be really exciting for younger kids when they're earning those points. Perhaps the most complete system that I've seen is offered by Goalie. And again, using this token economy system where they're earning tokens for good behaviors. It has the tablet and a corresponding parent app with it. And, they're able to keep track of the points and then they cash in their tokens or cash in their points for the various different rewards. And you can see like it has these built in on the app, on the tablet, the like if they're working on brushing their teeth or this is the bedtime routine. So you can see it as go potty, brush their teeth, but it actually has like the timer and visual reminders for the child with it. There are costs associated with this app, but for families who feel like this would be helpful, it is a nice option. I want to stop at this point since we've kind of been covering behavior charts so far and see if there's any questions related to using this. You can use the Q&A feature. I am going to be moving to talking about timeout afterwards. I'm not seeing any questions, and I will have time at the end as well for more questions. But if you have things that pop up as I'm talking, feel free to put the question in the Q&A. All right. So shifting gears a little bit to our second behavior strategy, timeout. I want to start off by talking about what timeout is and why it gets a bad rap, and clarify some of the misconceptions around that. So as I mentioned when I was first starting, timeout is actually shorthand for time out from positive reinforcement or positive attention. And timeout obviously is a very common, widely used practice to kind of address misbehavior. When we think about timeout, all we're referring to is when a child is removed from a space, and oftentimes it's you sit there and think about what you did, or they're told that. That's not what I'm referring to here. And when we think about timeout from an evidence-based behavior modification standpoint. It really is this time out from positive attention, where it is intentionally meant to be boring for the child. But in order for that to be effective, there needs to be positive attention and praise for when time in is occurring, or when, they are getting attention from the child. So again, during timeout, what we're thinking about is all the fun, distracting toys should be, removed from the timeout area. You as the parent or caregiver should be trying to interact with the child as minimally and neutrally as possible to avoid giving the child attention. Because what we know is that even negative attention where you're, scolding or telling them what they did wrong is still giving attention and can reinforce the child's behavior. I always say if they can't get positive attention, they will settle for negative attention. And so, before I jump into talking about how to effectively do timeouts, I just want to clear up kind of why many people have heard recently over the last 10 years, like why timeout is bad. Part of this is because Time Magazine had published two separate articles, one in 2014 and one in 2016, where several different professionals argued that timeout can be damaging for children. One of the things I do want to note is actually the authors of the 2014 article later recanted the majority of what they said in a separate Huffington Post article. And what they tried to clarify with that, and some of what we're going to be talking about today, is that they only wanted to warn against the inappropriate use of timeout. So really thinking about like how timeout could be damaging and what to avoid with timeout. But generally, there is not really evidence suggesting that timeout is bad or damaging for children. But what has happened over the last decade, partially because of these Time articles, is that there's been kind of this growing movement or rejection of timeout as a discipline strategy. You'll see this on social media or the internet. And so I just want to make it clear today, hopefully, that this can be a tool in your tool belt. There is 40 plus years of research behind the use of timeout as part of broader evidence-based parenting programs. Two common ones are parent-child interaction therapy, or behavioral parent training, behavior modification interventions. And overall, the evidence is positive for the use of timeout in terms of managing problematic behaviors. Especially when it is done in a safe and effective manner. And so that's what I want to focus on for the rest of the time today, is strategies to help with effectively implementing timeout in a structured manner, and things to think about to have in your repertoire as well, so that you're not always resorting to timeout as your go-to. And that really is first and foremost what I want to highlight. That, timeouts are good because they help establish clear boundaries and expectations for behavior, teaching children what is and isn't acceptable, but they should not be the primary discipline strategy that you're using. Generally, we recommend that timeout is reserved for non-compliance, so your child not doing what you tell them, or explicitly doing something that they're told not to do, or for aggressive behavior, so hitting, biting. And in order for timeout to be most effective, research supports that it needs to be done in combination with other positive reinforcement strategies, like use of praise, use of behavior chart that we talked about for when the child is engaging in appropriate behavior or when they are following directions. And that's kind of what I meant by you need to have the positive attention during the time in for the time out from positive attention to be effective. So when giving directions or giving what is sometimes referred to as a command to your child, so asking them to do something or telling them to do something, One of the things that's really critical is to be clear and specific. So, for example, you might say, please go downstairs now and put your coat and shoes on. It is clear to the child in that example what's expected of them. So when they follow the directions, so if they go downstairs and they put their coat and shoes on, you can praise them for listening and following directions. Or you can, thank you so much for listening to mommy the first time. It makes it so easy to get out the door when you do what I ask you right away. In the case when those directions are not followed, or if your child's starting to maybe get physical, like pushing, or you can tell that they're getting upset, you can give a timeout warning. This is reminding them of what's expected of them to do and what the consequence is if they don't follow directions, or in the case of aggressive behavior, if they end up being aggressive. I will say I've needed to do this a lot recently. One of my twins, actually the one who was just in here earlier, sometimes when, especially she's not feeling well or is tired, she'll get aggressive with her sister, like pinching her or pushing her, especially if she doesn't get what she wants or if she wants the toy or whatever her twin's playing with. And so we've been using a lot of if-then statements, which can be really helpful with giving those timeout warnings. So an example of this might be, if you hit or push your sister, then you'll get a timeout and won't be able to play with the mini train. But if you wait your turn, then you'll be able to ride it in 2 minutes. So we have to do a lot of turn taking, as many families with siblings have to do. And so by saying that if then, you're making your child aware of what they're expected to do. And it reminds them of, if they don't do that, that they're going to get a timeout. So then if they get that timeout, it's putting the choice kind of on their hands or up to them. And so when doing that, and I find personally that the if-then statements help me with this, is that you want to try to remain as calm and neutral in your tone of voice when you're giving these warnings, trying not to get upset or escalate. If you yell or if you get aggressive, grab your child right away and say, no, don't do that. What you're doing that while either bringing them to timeout or telling them what was wrong is it's actually modeling that potentially more aggressive or reactive behavior. And so by remaining as neutral as possible and following through with a consistent timeout procedure each time they don't comply or when they get aggressive, in this very structured, predictable way, it's not only keeping your child safe, but it's also helping them better understand kind of accountability and responsibility for the behaviors. And so I'm going to give a brief example of what this might look like with a timeout warning. Okay. No way. We need to open it up on YouTube because it's not wanting to play for me right now. I apologize. I had tested this out yesterday and it was working, and now it doesn't want to be my friend today. All right, here we go.
Hey, bud, we need to get this counter cleaned off. Please put your plate nicely in the sink.
Yeah, after this game.
If you don't put your plate nicely in the sink, you'll have to go to the timeout chair. Great listening. Good job, dude.
So that's an overly simplified example there, but you saw kind of the reminder of, if you don't put your plate, what was expected in the situation, in the sink, then you're gonna have to go to the timeout chair. This is part of a broader PCIT, parent-child interaction therapy, where the timeout chair would have already been introduced and explained to the child, although you can certainly do that without being part of a formal therapy program, but where, it's good for your child to know what behaviors in your household would lead to timeout. So is that used for aggressive behavior? Is that used for not listening? And making that clear to them up front. One of the other common mistakes, but also common questions that I get from people is around how long timeout should be. In general, timeouts should be short and focused. In fact, research suggests that timeout doesn't even need to be more than 3 minutes in length for young children. So, and by that I mean 2 to 7 years of age. One of the rules of thumb that you'll often hear used is this idea of 1 minute per year old that your child is. But this is really only one that I would say is good for toddler and preschool age children. So kind of in that like 2 to 5 age range, because we know that there is no added benefit of timeout being more than 5 minutes. And in fact, I would say there actually can be downsides of having it be longer than 5 minutes in terms of problematic behaviors arising and ending up giving in or not being consistent with it. And again, research suggests that it doesn't need to be more than 3 minutes. And so again, having a pre-established, quiet area free from distractions or toys. I generally, if you have a multi-floor home, would recommend having a timeout spot on each floor so that you're not needing to bring them upstairs or downstairs. You don't need a physical chair. It can just be a corner or area where they're going to be away from other family members, other distractions. One of the other things that some parenting programs do recommend is that the child needs to remain quiet and calm, either throughout the timeout or before it can start. And there isn't great research supporting actually that that needs to be done in order for timeout to be effective. Again, what's more important is that you're not giving your child attention during this time. So especially with young children, again, my girls are 2, almost 3. They will sometimes kind of talk to themselves or like hum. And we know that that's actually good self-regulation. And so if they're keeping themselves distracted and busy without being disruptive, that is totally fine. That said, if your child does try to escape or if they're getting aggressive with you, you do want to respond, but trying to do so again as calmly as possible, doing it in a neutral voice, reminding them that they need to stay in timeout. You can remind them, you have 2 minutes left. Another reason why I actually recommend the 3-minute timeout, even for 4 to 7 year olds, is that doing so can also allow you to be able to add 30 seconds, for example, if they do leave the timeout spot, or if they get aggressive and hit the wall or hit your leg while you're bringing them there. And so again, if you've taught that beforehand of, this is where we go. When we're in timeout, you're going to have a 2-minute timeout. But if you leave the spot, then you get another 30 seconds. It makes it very predictable, very structured, and they know what to expect from it. And again, it's putting the choice on them. One of the other really important things I wanted to highlight today related to timeout is that, again, the timeout is the timeout from positive attention. So as soon as that timeout is over, it's important to treat your child normally. A common mistake is that parents jump right into lecturing them again on what they did wrong, why they shouldn't do that, and what they should do again in the future. And that really just does not help and again can potentially hurt. That said, if they got the time out for non-compliance, it is important that after the timeout's over, that we calmly tell them, again, if possible, in that neutral, calm voice, what is expected of them and have them carry it out. This way, they're learning that misbehaving or not complying doesn't get them out of doing something. Instead, they get a boring timeout and they still have to do the same thing in the end. And if they don't comply when they're reminded of it again, then they return to timeout. Again, this is why it's helpful to have that shorter 2-3 minute timeout because it allows you to be able to do that. It can be really exhausting as a parent if you're doing a 5-minute timeout and then they're not complying again and you have to do another 5-minute timeout. If they do complete the task after that, that's when then it's really important that we praise them for listening and following directions. You don't want to jump into the next time. If you just do what I told you to do the first time, then you don't need a timeout. You just want to focus on praising them for listening and following through that time. They already got the consequence of the timeout for the first time with not complying. So I'm going to have us watch the same family. So I should have noted with the first one, this video is recorded by Dr. Corey Lineman, and she has a YouTube channel that has a lot of really great examples of different behavioral strategies, including with older children. So as you see here, because a lot of times people stop using timeout kind of in early childhood. But this example that I'm going to have us show is a really nice example of continuing to keep that calm, neutral voice, even when the child protests or resists going to timeout. And it also shows a nice example of how you can go back to normal after timeout is over. I recognize this is, a clinical psychologist modeling this with her child and is in a overly simplified environment, but it's still very helpful for kind of seeing some of these behaviors and what you want to be striving for to try to keep this consistency and routine in the timeout procedures. Okay, I'm gonna open this up on YouTube.
Strikeouts to start the frame, and that's now 3 in a row. Yeah, he's really settling in and getting a feel for his pitches, throwing them where he wants to.
No.
We'll see how long he can keep this.
I hate this game so much.
Benny, you broke the no throwing rule, so you have to go to the timeout chair.
Mom, this is gonna ruin my season. Mom, please just
If you do not walk to the timeout chair,
No,
you
just
will
let me, finish
lose
this
your
game.
privileges.
Let me finish this game, Mom. It's a really big game.
You didn't walk to the timeout chair like I told you, so you lose your privileges.
No. Mom, no. 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 No.
Taking the task away in this.
Remember, all you have to do to earn your privileges back is finish your timeout.
Here's Bryce Harper.
Stay on the chair till I say you can get off.
Ignoring the kind of minor misbehavior there of rolling up or holding up his sleeve or his hood.
You're sitting quietly on the chair. Remember, we don't throw things. You can have your privileges back.
Okay. So that obviously did not go for the full length of time that timeout would typically happen for. That was less than a minute. Typically you want to do for at least a minute, but this is a video more modeling what this would look like rather than having us sit and watch a child sit in timeout. Obviously, again, the longer it is, the more chance there is for it not to go effectively. And so especially for a young child who doesn't have a great sense of time, the impact and the effects of that 2-3 minute timeout actually still has just as strong, if not better consequences or effects than if you made it longer and had them keep running away. There is an example on her YouTube channel that has an example of where the child needs to be physically brought to timeout or where they try to escape from it. And so if you have a child who tends to engage in those behaviors or that you have concerns about, so it's Dr. Corey, Corey, and then Lineman, Lineman, who has a lot of these really great example videos and talks through some of these strategies from parent-child interaction therapy on her YouTube site. Similarly, and this is bringing me almost to the end of the webinar today. And before I open it up for questions, I just wanted to mention we have this research study that we're currently offering through the Child Study Center, that if the strategies that we talked about today are of interest to you, and you want to learn more like these, but also have the opportunity to be able to problem solve and tailor strategies for your child and your family, this support branch study provides clinician delivered behavior therapy and covers various behavioral strategies that, including what we talked about today, at no cost for families. And actually you got compensated for completing the different parts of the study. And so you can either scan the QR code that you see on your screen right now, or you can email the Child Study Center, which is just childstudycenter@gmail.com. It's at the bottom of the screen right here as well. And express interest in participating in this study if you would like. It's called the support branch study that you see here. And so this is a chance for you to, if you have concerns about your child's behavior, and that's why you attended today's webinar, that if you would like to be able to learn more strategies, you can do so. And we'll be continuing to offer this study throughout this spring and summer. So thank you so much for your attention so far. We have a little over 10 minutes for questions. But before I do open it up for questions, I was just wanted to ask if you can please complete this very brief evaluation form. This is something that the Early Childhood Education Initiative, who co-sponsors this Lunch and Learn series, has started doing to be able to get more information and feedback on the various Lunch and Learns that they offer. And so if you can scan the QR code on this page, I'll also drop the link for it. Let me see if I could drop it in the chat if you'll be able to get it. If not, I'll put it in the Q&A. But if you can please just take a couple moments to fill that out, I would greatly appreciate it. Let's see, yeah. Here is the link for that chat, or for that questionnaire. And at this time, I will open it up for any questions that you might have related to managing behavior concerns in general, or specifically related to implementing timeout or behavior charts with your child. A couple of people have dropped off. If you don't have questions, you are free to leave. I will happily also hang on for any questions that people have for the last 10 minutes. Thank you for those who attended today live. So great question. Thank you. It's a bunch of questions that all just came in at one time. So the first one was related to how to navigate when you have siblings, so multiple children, and being able to try to focus on a child's behavior one-on-one. And so any strategies for helping shift the focus from both kids to just the one that needs attention. And so, yeah, this is such a common concern. Most, households have more than one child. So a couple different things that can be helpful. So one is proactively explaining, and behavior charts are one way you can do that, each child in your family is working on different behaviors. And so, mom might need to react or give consequences for behaviors for one child that are not the same as others. So that kind of this idea of that there are different needs for different children, and that can help with the fairness that often gets raised by kids. The other general strategy is if you have some built in what is called special time or positive time with each child one-on-one, where they're getting a lot of that positive one-on-one undivided attention, it can help then when you need to spend time dealing with problematic behaviors with one child, for the other child not to feel like, oh, she's getting all this attention because she's misbehaving, and then what can happen with the problematic behaviors. The one other thing, and I'm not sure if this is what you were getting at, but if what you're asking is like the trying to deal with the problematic behavior, if you can have the child who is engaging in the problematic behavior be the one who has to leave, what often happens is, like, if you have a child totally melting down, you often want to like have them stay and make the other child leave, but that can feel like a punishment for that child. Like if they were playing and didn't do anything wrong, if you're then sending them out in a way, it can feel like they're being punished even though they didn't do anything wrong. So when possible, it's not always possible, if you can have the child who did misbehave, who you're dealing with, come with you, or have them be the one who goes away so that the other child, and really focusing on catching your children be good when they are engaging in positive behaviors, praising that, labeling that. So again, that's that attending to those positive behaviors, so your kids are not only getting attention for problematic behavior. So second question was related to how do you get daycare to buy into this when they complain about the kids' behavior? This is such a great question too, and definitely can be hard. So I think a couple things come to mind here. So having them, if possible, identify like what is their most problematic concern or their biggest concern. It can be really overwhelming to just constantly hear small negative feedback about your child. And so if there is one thing that you're really working on, you can actually build that into the behavior chart. And even though it's not happening right as it's happening, maybe it is, if your child tends to get aggressive with other kids. So if they're able to get through before nap time without being aggressive, they get a sticker for that. They're able to get through after nap time till you pick them up without being aggressive, they get another sticker for that. And that way, it's actually flipping it on its head, and it's forcing daycare to give you information about when things have gone well. You can praise it, but it's having them help you pick like what is the one or two most problematic behaviors that they really want to help you work with, and you're using that positive behavior. If possible, and I say this knowing that daycare teachers often have a 1-to-8 ratio for child, their preschool age kids, and so it can be hard. If they can be focusing on giving the praise for good behavior as well, or like letting them know we have found this to be really effective, that can be helpful. Most daycares are not able to do like the behavior charts in school the way that we often will do with IEPs or 504s. For elementary school age kids, but you can talk with them. Sometimes daycare teachers, and actually my girls' daycare teachers have this, like they do have a special like prize box that like when kids are really big helpers or have really good behaviors, or if they're able to overcome after they've had a really big meltdown, they can like let the kids pick a small little prize or snack. And so sometimes there are things that are already built in that the daycare has that maybe you can work with. So having that conversation, if your daycare uses like the ProCare app, you can do that, or trying to do it at pickup. Finding times to have that conversation can be challenging, but it can be really helpful. So one of the other questions was related to what I said that I mentioned the timeout shouldn't be the main disciplinary strategy. What do you recommend using as the main disciplinary strategy? Really, I would say I don't recommend any one main. So having multiple tools in your tool belt, but loss of privileges can be very effective. Planned ignoring. So if there are certain minor annoying behaviors, not reacting to some of the smaller things, especially if you have, and this is actually going to, the next question was related to if you have a child diagnosed with ADHD and ODD, like how to use these strategies. And so, my response here is if you have a child who's frequently displaying high levels of behavior problems, picking your battles and knowing which behaviors you really want to target, using some for timeout. My other response there is that in terms of the discipline, so having that flipped on its head rather than it being negative consequences, trying to focus on the positive behaviors can be very helpful with it. And so generally, positive reinforcement is more effective and more helpful than punishment or negative consequences. And so that's really where my reaction to that would be. So using things like the behavior chart or a token economy with adding, losing, loss of privileges, if it is certain, like, or is it tablets or watching TV, like, so in our household typically they get to watch 2 of the like 20-minute or 10-minute episodes, and we've had times where it's one of them loses the privilege to be able to watch that day, and so typically one of us as the caregiver will go upstairs with that child and they can read or play with their blocks or toys or other things with us, so they're still having positive attention and engaging in things, but they're not getting, for them right now, that 2 Doc McStuffins or Octonauts is very reinforcing for them. So that's kind of where it's really using a range of different things. Loss of privileges is generally effective, but also focusing more on the positives. One of the other questions was, do you find that a timer works with helping the time out or managing time with tasks like chore charts? So it depends. For neurodivergent children, children with ADHD, autism, visual timers are hugely beneficial. I would say with younger kids in general, having visual timers is really helpful. It helps them see. This was actually, and it is saved on the Child Study Center webinar series. I had done one in the fall where we talked about use of timers. And so one of the things that's nice about that is it lets them see how much time they have left, so they can see kind of on the time timer the color going down and decreasing, but it also takes that burden off of you to be the one telling them, and so it can feel a little less negative to them having it come from the timer. I will say I've even done that with like with sitting on the potty. Again, I mentioned one of my twins really doesn't like sitting on the potty, was resistant to it. And so we would use like the visual music timers, or even put on like a song that would be playing. And that's way she knew when the song was over, she could get off. And oftentimes she was able to go during that 3-minute period, but it was just getting her to actually physically sit long enough, because she would just be like, I don't have to go. And so using timers, using something auditory to help them have a sense. I mean, you wouldn't want to use a video or auditory thing during timeout, because that could be reinforcing. But for the other things like chore charts or helping them keep track of it, yes, having something visual, helping them with keeping track of time. We know that neurodivergent children tend to have difficulty estimating time, so that can be really helpful. This is a great question. A question that was raised was, what do you do if a child says if-then statements are a threat? So my initial reaction there is I try to say, I'm helping you make smart choices. Like, I'm helping you know what's expected of you. So I'm not threatening you. I'm letting you know that if you're able to do this, then this thing can happen. And you can say, like, I don't want you to feel like I'm being unfair, or I don't want you to feel like you didn't know what was expected of you. Generally, what that maybe makes me think about, so there's a couple things. One, we know that kids actually with ADHD and ODD, to the other question that was raised, tend to have this bias where they think other people are being aggressive or attacking them even when they're not. It's called the hostile attribution bias. And so it could be that there's some of this that might be an indication that like they are perceiving neutral things or even positive things as aggressive and hostile. And so I think some of that is thinking about tone of voice there and trying to be mindful of that. Even when we think we are calm, sometimes we are kind of doing the like, if I have to say this one more time, and that might be what's indicating it. But so I would both try to say, like, I'm doing this to help you be aware of what's expected, to try to give you choices, but also try to attend to your tone a little bit there in case that might be indicating some hostility. I see that in answering all of the questions, I have gone a couple minutes over. So thank you so much for those of you who have hung out with me and stayed with us to the end. Again, if you can take the moment to fill out this brief evaluation form, we'd greatly appreciate it. And we'll be putting the recording for today's video along with all of the other Lunch and Learns from the Child Study Center and Early Childhood Education Initiative up on our YouTube channel shortly. Thanks so much and have a great rest of your day.